Well, it's been over 2 years since they lost their loved ones, but today, after their fight to get a Winnipeg-area landfill search, the families of Morgan Harris and Marcedes Myran are finally able to say a better goodbye. Police say they've confirmed the second set of remains found in the landfill to be Myran, on the right in this image. Earlier this month, they identified the first set of remains to be Harris. So after the family's long fight, what does today mean? Wab Kinew is the Premier of Manitoba, and he joins me now. Premier, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
What have you heard from the families and the communities, the families of Marcedes Myran and Morgan Harris since this news?
Marcedes Myran and Morgan Harris are going to be coming home, and the families have been asking for this. They've been pushing for this even when they were told it was impossible, and they faced any number of obstacles. And now today they're able to think about the next step, which is perhaps a funeral, perhaps a memorial, or some other way to honor their loved one in a way that I think any Canadian out there would want to be able to do for the people that we care about. So there's certainly a lot of emotion that I've heard from these families who are going through the whole range of complicated feelings that I'm sure you can imagine. In some ways, the thing that they've been pushing for all this time is now real. In another way, it makes that grief that much more solidified and something that they have to contend with. And still, there's that aspect of where to go from here. So for our team, who's been working very closely with the families of these two women, as well as with First Nations leadership, with the federal government, today was an important step forward. When we set out to search the Prairie Green landfill, we didn't know what the odds were that we would succeed. It seemed like long odds, to say the very least. But to be able to be here today and to say that these two women are coming home to their families, to be honored the way that they see fit, it's an important step.
I remember speaking with you when you announced the plans to go ahead with the search, and you walked us through the process that would be used. And, you know, it did seem impossible at some points, right? Given the nature of this landfill, the time that had passed, the amount of waste that had been dumped there. But yet here we are. I just wonder if you always seem more optimistic than most that this could work. Were you surprised that it happened and happened as relatively quickly as it did?
Well, you're very right, David. I tried to be optimistic throughout, but realistically, and I think some of the family members have confided a bit of this feeling to me too. I think we had that anxiety or self-doubt or whatever you want to call it, that we may not, in fact, succeed. And then, you know, how are we going to manage that situation? But true to the predictions of the civil servants and the experts who helped us design this search, we were able to use dates on milk cartons, addresses on envelopes, and to just kind of zero in closer and closer to that target range, that target location, until eventually a few weeks ago, we did find the first human remains. And then working with the RCMP, the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner, and others, now be in a position to say not only Morgan Harris, but today Marcedes Myran have been identified as the people that we found. And so we can move ahead with the healing journey. And given all the attention nationally to this, I hope that the healing that we're talking about is first and foremost for these two families. But I hope there's also healing for Canadians and healing for neighbors in our province who in some cases were pitted one against the other and subject to some very difficult conversations. So hopefully we can move forward in a good way. The work here is not done. I want to make clear to your viewers, the search continues. We are still continuing to find remains that we believe are these two women. And so the search will continue as we do that. But given the clarity around the identification of Marcedes and Morgan, I think it is fitting for us to now reflect a bit on what does this say about us as a country? We did the right thing in the end. What does this say about reconciliation? The fact that we heeded the calls of these families asking for dignity and asking for closure.
No, I remember when you said, when you go missing, we come looking, right? You sort of boiled it down to that. And I know this was done within 3 months, which I think is a little bit faster than I think even people who are optimistic were suggesting. And I don't want to reduce this to a dollar amount, but the argument against it was it would be too expensive. I just wonder if you have a sense of, because you were also optimistic that it would be much cheaper venture than some of the people who were against it had suggested. Do you have an idea of how it landed in terms of Because it might be instructive for future examples. Do you know what the cost was to get to this point?
Yeah, we do. I'm not going to share it publicly today just because we have some loose ends to tie up with meeting with the oversight committee with the families. But I can tell you this project is way under budget. And just to give that context for your viewers, we had expected potentially that this stage of the search would take this entire calendar year. And here we are in March talking about an identification of Morgan and Marcedes. So you can kind of extrapolate from that where we are on the budget path. But in terms of winning that license from Manitobans, winning the support, talking about this as a fiscally responsible project, but first and foremost, a humanitarian project was really, really important. And we tried to just tell people who are maybe skeptical of this at first, this is a values test. This is a question of who we are as Manitobans. Do we give that dignity? Do we give that same consideration to these women as we would ask of any other? And so along the way, one of the things that I think we can do is that we kind of systematically disproved each of the misconceptions that was being used to argue against the search. This was done safely. This was done under budget. This was done in the end. We were able to deliver on something that some people said was impossible. So once you poke a hole through each of those arguments, I think what you're left to reflect on was, okay, now that we've done this, we've done the right thing as Manitobans, done the right thing as Canadians. What does that say about us? And I would hope that what we're able to say is that we're moving forward. We're moving forward with that idea of every child matters. Every woman in our society is accorded the same level of respect, and every person is equal to that same dignity that we aspire and espouse when we talk about human rights. But now I think having gone through that test of ourselves and our character and our souls, we can say that we as a country and a province are living up to those values that we hold so dear.
Just one final question, Premier, before we let you go. There is another victim associated with this particular tragedy and this particular killer, Marcedes Myran, or Buffalo Woman. I apologize if I butchered the pronunciation. Is there any hope of finding answers, any indicator in the search so far on whether she might be located in this particular search?
Yeah, your pronunciation is close. It's always phonetic. It's Mashkate Pejiki Ikwe Iban. And that is the Anishinaabe term for the late Buffalo Woman. And I think given what we've just been through, I would want to be hopeful and optimistic. But I do also want to give that reverence to the family of Marcedes Myran and to really talk about their loved one today. She is the one that we've identified most recently. I want to acknowledge the courage and bravery of Morgan Harris's family. And with Marcedes' family in particular, I can only imagine what it was like for them this past week and change, where they watched another family get the news that they were seeking. They had to be patient. They had to watch this play out publicly. But today, perhaps relief and a sense of reassurance that we were able to deliver the news that their loved one is now coming home as well too.
Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew, we appreciate the time today, sir. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.